His head was dizzy, his throat was dry, and the feeling of a hangover made Liu Feng want to vomit. But the empty stomach has nothing to vomit out. He opened his eyes, as if exhausting all his energy. He entered a crowded small room, lying on a wooden bed. The surrounding environment was very old, exuding a musty smell. "Where is this?" No one answered him. There was a red bucket not far away. Liu Feng stood up and stood in front of the bucket, scooping up half a scoop of cold water and drank it. At last he felt better. Liu Feng raised his head and looked at himself in the mirror in front of him. Stupid. In the mirror was a man with messy hair. He was in his 20s. His upper body was wearing a protective camouflage uniform and his lower body was a pair of worn suit trousers. The complexion is dry and thin, like perennial malnutrition. Liu Feng's hands trembled a little, and he touched his face, feeling so real. "Who is this? It's not me." A tingling sensation rushed into his brain, directly making him unable to hold his fragile body. Half kneeling in front of the bucket and panting heavily, some chaotic memories appeared before his eyes. Liu Feng, 24 years old, elementary school education, married for 4 years, wife named Zhang Xiaoyan, and a child, unemployed, idling since childhood, fighting around, gambling, and often beating his wife. Do not. These memories make Liu Feng's mind very confused and mixed with his memories. He is also called Liu Feng, 35 years old, graduated from a major university, chairman of 2 listed companies, and worth over 2.7 billion in 2020. He has just been named one of the 10 outstanding young talents and is not yet married. Liu Feng sorted his memories, raised his head sharply, and looked at the month card on the wall. He froze on the spot like a lightning strike. The date on the month card is astonishingly, the early 1990s. 2 hours later, Liu Feng finally digested the memories in his mind. This is simply a tragic love story of this era. Liu Feng and Zhang Xiaoyan met on a blind date. Because Liu Feng dropped out of school and didn't learn much crafts, his source of life is very good. Is unstable. Zhang Xiaoyan refused to have sex, trying to force Liu Feng by this, and offered to work in the city. Unexpectedly, when Liu Feng had just entered the factory for a few days, he met a group of friends and gambling. After being dismissed from the factory, he drank every day and had a little trouble. When he went home, she would be beaten and kicked. Such Liu Feng made Zhang Xiaoyan even more afraid to give herself to him, but some elderly people told her that it would be fine to have a child, and men are all running for their children. A few months later Zhang Xiaoyan adopted a half-year-old daughter, but Liu Feng did not change much. Zhang Xiaoyan thought about divorce, but in this age, divorce is something that a woman can't think of. Yesterday, when Liu Feng came back from drinking, he beat her up and fell asleep in bed. Unexpectedly, this sleep brought the current Liu Feng to the present. The sound of opening the door sounded outside the door, interrupting Liu Feng's memory, and looking up at the door. The door opened and a little pink girl ran in. When she saw Liu Feng kneeling halfway in front of the bucket, her smile instantly turned into fear, as if she had seen a demon. "Mom, he is awake." The little guy hugged a slender thigh tightly. Liu Feng looked up. She was a beautiful girl with a slim head of 1.7 meters, delicate features, and big bright eyes. The pure energy on the body definitely kills all female internet celebrities on the internet many years later. It's just that the fear in her eyes and the bruises on her face wiped out all the damage. Looking at each other, Liu Feng was a little embarrassed, and slowly raised his hand to say hello, "How are you?" Zhang Xiaoyan had never heard her husband speak so softly. After a while, she lowered her head and said, "Are you hungry? I'm going to cook." "Thank you," Liu Feng said. Zhang Xiaoyan thought that there was a problem with her ears, looked at him with wide eyes, and asked in disbelief, "What did you say?" "I say thank you." Zhang Xiaoyan smiled miserably, and said, "You're welcome. When you hit me next time, Just start lightly. Liu Feng wanted to tell her that the one who beat her yesterday was not himself, but when he thought about it, no one would believe it, that is, he himself is now dubious about whether he was dreaming. Although Zhang Xiaoyan was only 23 years old, she was very dexterous in the kitchen. She sighed while looking at the things in the kitchen. The clever woman couldn't cook without rice. Only a bunch of dried noodles and 2 eggs were left in the house. This family was supported by her 2 jobs. Originally, she had saved a huge sum of hundreds of dollars, which was taken by Liu Feng and placed on the gambling table. Now this family is really a family member. Liu Feng drank half a scoop of cold water again, regaining some strength, sat back on the bed and looked at this pink little guy. If I remember correctly, she called Duo Duo. Many, come here. The little guy took a step back with a face full of fear, tightly holding the old doll in his arms. Liu Feng sighed a little helplessly. In her eyes, she might be more terrifying than the devil. It can only be said that Liu Feng's death was a blessing. Duo Duo, help mother get the dishes and chopsticks. Zhang Xiaoyan's voice came from the kitchen, very brisk. If there is no Liu Feng in this home, I believe it will be even more warm. Duo Duo rushed to the kitchen and skillfully took out 3 pairs of chopsticks and a plate of pickles. Zhang Xiaoyan took out 3 large bowls and placed them on the shabby table. Noodles boiled in white water, each bowl contained a green vegetable, only Liu Feng's bowl contained 2 poached eggs, which looked so eye-catching. This is a family practice. No matter what delicious food is on Yuyu reading www.yuyuganshu.com, it must be placed in Liu Feng's bowl, otherwise he would definitely hold the bowl on Zhang Xiaoyan's head. Let's eat. Zhang Xiaoyan sat across the table, without looking at Liu Feng, smiled at Duo Duo, and said, "You are growing up, eat." This meal is definitely the worst meal Liu Feng has ever eaten. Zhang Xiaoyan found that Liu Feng didn't move his chopsticks, and said, "There is no soy sauce at home, don't get angry, just eat it. If you want to eat well, you can ask your buddies." Very good. Liu Feng picked up the chopsticks and picked up the poached egg in his bowl and placed it in Duo Duo's bowl. Duo Duo stared at the eggs in the bowl, and looked at Zhang Xiaoyan not daring to move his chopsticks. Liu Feng put another poached egg in Zhang Xiaoyan's bowl. Zhang Xiaoyan felt that today's Liu Feng was exceptionally abnormal. From the moment she walked in, she was totally different from before. All she could think of was that Liu Feng wanted money again. There is really no money at home, and I can't advance my salary. If this continues, I and Duo Duo will really starve to death. Zhang Xiaoyan's voice was full of pleading. She was scared, afraid that it would annoy Liu Feng, but she would punch and kick again, and tears fell into the bowl as she talked. Mom won't cry, mother won't cry. Duo Duo quickly wiped Zhang Xiaoyan's tears. I didn't ask for money. Liu Feng was most afraid of a woman's tears. For a while, the whole person was in a hurry and didn't know what to do. He hurriedly said, "I don't work now. You go to work every day. Duo Duo is growing up again, give you 2 eggs to eat." Such caring words can be said from Liu Feng's mouth. Zhang Xiaoyan felt that her 3 views had been subverted, and she looked up at Liu Feng's face in disbelief. This person, he, has changed sex? The first publication of this book is from 17K Novels. The first time you see the genuine content. The noodles in the bowl were swept away like a wind-rolling cloud. Liu Feng picked up the bowl and drank the noodle soup. He was very satisfied when he smashed his mouth. In the past, he shared his poor childhood and the hardships of his entrepreneurial period on many occasions. Now, when he compares, Liu Feng realizes how happy he was at that time. Zhang Xiaoyan stood up and prepared to clean up the dishes. Liu Feng hurriedly said, "I'm here, I'm very embarrassed to eat for nothing." Zhang Xiaoyan was taken aback for a moment. The dishes and chopsticks in her hand had been taken away. Lu Feng took the dishes into the kitchen and started to wash the pot. Duo's eyes widened, there was a big question mark in his little head, and he asked in a low voice, "Mom, what's wrong with him?" Zhang Xiaoyan didn't know what was wrong with him. All she could think of was that Lu Feng wanted money, and the only money in the family now was 900 yuan as a gift money when he got married. Because of the 900 yuan, Lu Feng had beaten himself more than once, but the money was really spent, and the cost of moving out of the village all the way was all based on the money. Zhang Xiaoyan wanted to tell Duo that he would become a good father, but when the words came to his lips, she thought again, if Lu Feng's trick didn't cost him money, I'm afraid he would beat herself again. Instead of doing this, why give her this hope? Maybe my conscience has discovered it. Is he getting better? The naive words were full of expectation. Zhang Xiaoyan didn't speak, she reached out her hand and touched Duo's little head, looked at her dotingly, and said, "Why don't you go to the electronics factory with your mother for a while?" Duo frowned and said, "It's noisy there, and that fat uncle always scolds me." "Be good, he scolds you and ignores him. We are poor and can't offend others." Zhang Xiaoyan was a little helpless, but she managed to get a job in the electronics factory. Working as a waiter in a small restaurant to wash dishes every morning, it costs 50 yuan a month. The electronics factory is a high-end factory. She works on behalf of others. She earns 200 yuan a month and gives her 50 yuan. Don't look at that person who doesn't go to work, he gets 150 yuan a month, and some people are willing to get 30 or 40 yuan a month. It all depends on Zhang Xiaoyan's fast hand, quick work, and high school education to get a few more yuan. Lu Feng was washing the dishes in the kitchen. With food in his stomach, his brain became flexible and he began to wonder how he came into this Lu Feng's body. He also saw some rebirth, but he was reborn in someone else's body, which is really strange. After 10 years of struggle, the assets of more than 2 billion are not so easy to give up. It contains too much of his hard work, and now Lu Feng just wants to go back. As for Zhang Xiaoyan and Zhang Xiaoyan, the previous Lu Feng died, and their lives will be better. Each has its own life. Lu Feng was never a soft-hearted person. Looking at the pot washing water in the pot, Lu Feng secretly thought, would he let himself go back if he was powered on? Still have another drink? He immediately vetoed the drinking. Now this family has no such conditions. Many of the movies in the movie are electric shocks. I can reach into the basin and energize the basin. Even if it is unsuccessful, the whole body will twitch after the electric shock, and I will be disconnected from the power source, and I will not be electrocuted. Lu Feng nodded secretly, thinking that this was a method. Although this method was funny, he was willing to try as long as there was a glimmer of hope. Out of the kitchen, Lu Feng saw the two of them muttering something, and said, "Are you okay with your face injury?" Zhang Xiaoyan was a little overwhelmed by this sudden concern, and replied, "It's okay. Is there any medicine at home? Put on some medicine." "No, forget it, it won't matter." Zhang Xiaoyan bit her lip and hesitated for a while and said, "Lu Feng, the gift money that your family gave back at the time is really spent. I didn't lie to you. I bought the food tonight. No, I went to the electronics factory to borrow a few cents from someone." After Zhang Xiaoyan finished speaking, her eyes closed tightly, her pretty face twisted into a ball, she was ready to meet the storm of his fists and feet, but not. "Then borrow something first. You have to eat. Duo is growing up. You still go to work in the afternoon, right?" Lu Feng looked at Duo with a smile and said, Duo will stay with me at home." Zhang Xiaoyan's face stretched out and her eyes were full of disbelief. Now she doesn't know what Lu Feng wants to do. As for him, he has really changed for the better. She couldn't believe that Zhang Xiaoyan was not disappointed with Lu Feng, but desperate, she did not dare to hold a little hope, otherwise she might fall into the 18th in the next second. Zhang Xiaoyan looked at Duo Duo, and immediately thought of something. She pulled Duo Duo into her arms in fear, and shouted at Liu Feng, "What do you want to do? Are you crazy?" "What? Liu Feng just wanted to help her with the baby, and this little guy is really cute, I don't know why she reacted so much. If you dare to sell Duo Duo, I will call the police, and I will die and let you go to hell." Zhang Xiaoyan dared to speak to Liu Feng for the first time, her eyes full of determination, as if she was telling Liu Feng that she said it. He did it, turned around and touched Duo Duo's little head, and said gently, "Mom goes to change clothes and go to the factory in a while." Zhang Xiaoyan went to the dilapidated cabinet and opened the door and took out the electronics factory work jacket. This is her best piece of clothing. The rest was bought when she got married. "How big your eyes?" blinked to look at Lu Feng peek, approached cautiously, and asked, "Are you getting better?" Liu Feng nodded and whispered, "Yes." "Then you won't beat mother again, will you?" "Yes, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com will definitely stop playing." A smile bloomed on the little guy's face, he beckoned and said, "Come here." Liu Feng bent down and attached his ears, and the little guy whispered in his ears, "Baba, as long as you don't beat mother, I will call you Baba." Zhang Xiaoyan put on her coat, and saw Duo Duo whispering to Liu Feng, and said, "Duo Duo, let's go, you will be scolded for late." He hugged Duo Duo and went out. Liu Feng was still bent over, and he was stunned for more than 10 seconds, and a thought-provoking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Growing up, I haven't been called a daddy yet, and the milky voice is pretty nice." Zhang Xiaoyan left before dawn every day and came back at 8 or 9 in the evening. The house was a little messy. Liu Feng stood up and started to clean up the house, scrubbing all the tables and chairs, but thinking about going back in his mind. He ran through all the methods he could think of. Since he could come, he would be able to go back. The most feared was that he was considered to have died suddenly after drinking. After the doctor declared his death, he was sent directly to the crematorium. If it's burned to ashes, it's really done. Liu Feng just hoped that the doctor would not give up on himself. In the afternoon, in addition to cleaning up his house, Liu Feng also found 2 wires and plugged them into the sockets to lead them into the water basin. At night, it was pitch black outside, there was not even a street lamp, only the stars on the horizon could be seen, and the dim yellow gas lamp in the room made people feel a little depressed. The sound of a key opening sounded outside the door, and when the door opened, Zhang Xiaoyan looked a little blinded at the tidy house. She held Duo Duo in her arms and covered her with her coat, apparently asleep. "Did you?" Zhang Xiaoyan asked when she looked at Liu Feng, a little bit of joy in her voice. The first publication of this book is from 17K Novels. The first time you see the genuine content. "Yeah, I didn't have anything to do at home this afternoon, so I cleaned up." Liu Feng's gaze fell on Zhang Xiaoyan's other hand. The bag contained vegetables, soy sauce, and a small piece of pork. The white water noodles at noon were not nutritious, and Liu Feng was now dizzy with hunger. Zhang Xiaoyan followed Lu Feng's gaze to the bag in her hand and said, "I borrowed 80 cents from Sister Li from the electronics factory to buy some food and meat. You can pick it up for me and I will cook immediately." Liu Feng took the bag and said, "Look at the kid, I'll cook." After speaking, he plunged into the kitchen. Zhang Xiaoyan put the sleeping Dodo on the bed, looked at the clean and tidy home, and looked at the busy back in the kitchen. She was like a dream. Is this real? Is it because God thinks I am too bitter? Give me some sweetness? Zhang Xiaoyan never expects to be rich. He looks at the busy man in the kitchen, but only expects that this kind of life can last a few more days, even a few more hours, and he is satisfied. Liu Feng has never been so excited when he strikes the bell for the first time his company goes public. Now, looking at the few tails of meat, he can't calm down for a long time. 8 cents to buy such a large pile of things. Food stamps are still being used in some small places. The big white rabbit is 3 yuan a cent, and the pork is less than 50 cents a catty. Zhang Xiaoyan is very diligent, and her income is enough to make the family worry about food and clothing. The meat sliced out of the pot, sizzling, and the smell of the meat was mouth-watering. Liu Feng skillfully stirred the vegetables into the pot, and the smell of meat drifted out of the house and drifted into the corridor. In another rental house, a fat woman in her 40s sniffed and asked the man next to her, "Whose meat smells like this? Who do you manage? Let's eat. There are only a few edible meats in this corridor. It's not too fancy, and it's not a big deal. I have to check it out. What if it is Liu Feng's house? That Liu Feng is a gambler. The poor one can't even drink northwest wind and eat meat. What if he wins? His wife borrowed $1.02 from me 2 months ago and paid 6 cents. There is still 6 cents. Damn, she ran away when she saw me." The woman opened the door while speaking and went out. Liu Feng put the food on the table and looked at Zhang Xiaoyan and said, "Let's eat, don't disturb a lot, just leave some for her." Zhang Xiaoyan nodded and sat on the opposite side, watching the table full of food, and her eyes were a little moist. She wanted to say something, tears fell from her mouth and tears. "What's the matter?" Liu Li picked up a steamed bun and ate it into his mouth, and asked, "Why are you crying?" "It's okay, I'm just happy." Zhang Xiaoyan wiped her tears, choked up and said, "You will find a job in a few days, and there will be a good day. You won't be with your friends, all right? I beg you." "Well, no more." Liu Li nodded. As for finding a job, he didn't agree. After eating this meal, he had to go back. Liu Feng glanced at the many sleeping people, secretly wishing the mother and daughter a good future, bowed their heads to eat. The woman wandered in the corridor for a long time, and finally locked Liu Feng's house and reached out and knocked on the door. "Who?" Zhang Xiaoyan asked. "Me. Li Dafeng." The voice outside the door was very low, as if with a trace of anger. Zhang Xiaoyan looked nervous when she heard the name. Which household in the corridor didn't know Li Dafeng was difficult to provoke? If it weren't for the fact that she couldn't live 2 months ago, she wouldn't borrow money from Li Dafeng. Originally, the salary was paid back, but as soon as the money was paid, Liu Feng took it to eat and drink with the group of buddies. She squeezed out 6 cents to pay back half. "What's wrong?" Liu Feng sensed something was wrong with her. "It's okay, but I haven't paid back the 6 cents. I'll tell her that if the money is paid this month, I will pay her first." Zhang Xiaoyan stood up and opened the door. "I put the dishes into the kitchen." Liu Feng picked up the dishes and went into the kitchen. Half a basin of water has been connected to the kitchen, with sockets and 2 wires next to him. Liu Feng looked at everything in front of him, took a deep breath, and began to play around, praying silently in his heart that he must succeed, hoping to open his eyes again when he became chairman Liu Feng. Zhang Xiaoyan opened the door and saw Li Dafeng's black face. She accompanied her smiling face and said, "Sister Li, it's so late, what's the matter? Your family's life is good, eat meat." Li Dafeng leaned against the door frame and said, "You still owe me 6 cents, when will you give it? I can't eat meat if I borrow money. You have a thick skin." "Of." Zhang Xiaoyan said with embarrassment on her face, "Sister Li, my family's life is not easy. Today I borrowed 80 cents from someone to improve the food. If you allow me a few more days, you will be paid and I will definitely pay you back." "Stop the nonsense, how long have you been procrastinating? I gave you a face, right? Just now, pay the money." Li Dafeng was reckless. Zhang Xiaoyan hurriedly touched her pocket. 8 cents still had 3 cents left, so she said, "I will pay you 3 cents first, and if the salary is paid, I will definitely pay you back." Li Dafeng snatched the 3 cents and shouted, "How about 3 cents? If you don't pay back today, don't blame me for cursing the street. Sister Li, can you let me for a few days? Jiang Xiaoyan's voice was full of pleading, her eyes were red, her life finally saw hope, and she believed that the future would definitely get better. I beg you. Li Dafeng shook off Jiang Xiaoyan's hand, and said coldly, you're going to come here to pay back the money, just now, or don't blame me for being polite. Sister Li, can you let me for a few days, just a few days? I'm kneeling for you. Jiang Xiaoyan burst into tears and knelt on the ground. Repaying debts is justified, and she really has no choice but to plead. In the kitchen, Liu Feng had already plugged 2 wires into the jacks, and a spark came out. He listened to all the conversations at the door, and he secretly told himself that everything had nothing to do with him, and he wanted to go back. Don't come here! Li Dafeng yelled in the corridor, come out and have a look, Jiang Xiaoyan won't pay the money. Every family opened their doors to watch the excitement, muttering endlessly. This person is really shameless. He owes money to someone and doesn't pay it back. You don't know, there are even shameless ones. Someone saw her going out to sell. Where did you see it? Don't care where you saw it, it must be true. Her man has eaten, drink, and gambling. Where does the money come from? That's right, it's just that good to look good. With all kinds of humiliating words, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com made Jiang Xiaoyan feel ashamed, stood up and closed the door, ran to the bed and cried with a headache. Open the door, what do you behave when hiding inside? You are justified if you owe money. Li Dafeng's noise sounded outside the door, followed by a knock on the door. Who doesn't know that you are a watch on this floor? If you don't have any money, you can sell it. If you borrow the money and don't pay it back, why are you so cheeky? Open the door. It's useful to be beautiful? Is there a way to find a man to pay back the money? Jiang Xiaoyan hugged her knees and wept bitterly. She didn't dare to go out and quarrel. The other party would make her speechless by paying back the money. She could only bear it silently. I don't know how many times she was scolded like this in the past few years. Liu Feng watched the smoke from the electric wires in the basin, and his heart was in a mess. He kept telling himself that he should not be soft-hearted and that he must go back. The success he had achieved after 10 years of hard work was gone before he could enjoy it. But Jiang Xiaoyan's fragile and helpless cry outside the kitchen made him a little bit painful. Taking a deep breath, he decided to reach into the basin. If he went back, everything here has nothing to do with him. Boom! Watch yourself! Open the door! Pay it back! The loud slamming of the door directly awakened Duo from his dream. After waking up, he began to cry. Jiang Xiaoyan hurriedly hugged Duo in her arms. The mother and daughter curled up on the corner of the bed. She kept slapping Duo's back, telling her that it was okay. Dad! I'm afraid. Father! A lot of shouts are piercing. Liu Feng's hand was about to touch the water in the basin, he heard a lot of screams, and slammed it back. He took a deep breath and said to himself, God, you won. If I don't let the mother and son live a good life, I won't be surnamed Liu. The first publication of this book is from 17K Novels. The first time you see the genuine content. Liu Feng rushed out of the kitchen and looked at the mother and daughter and said, it's okay, I'm here. Duo lay in Jiang Xiaoyan's arms and turned to look at Liu Feng. His small face was full of tears, stopped crying, and the curses and kicks outside the door continued. Jiang Xiaoyan never thought that Liu Fengshan would stand up. He was indifferent to everything that happened at home before. When Liu Feng walked towards the door, his back was very tall in Jiang Xiaoyan's eyes, like a high wall, which made people feel at ease. Liu Feng opened the door, Li Dafeng kicked and stood in front of Liu Feng. Looking at Liu Feng, his heart was still a little guilty. After all, Liu Feng's reputation is not very good. Together. So you are at home? If you are at home today, you have to pay back. Li Dafang lacked confidence. You owe you 6 cents, don't you? Lu Feng looked at her and said, I have 6 cents, you gave me the 30 cents just now. When Li Dafang heard the money back, a touch of contempt appeared on his face, and he thought to himself that he was just a soft egg. He took out the 3 cents from his pocket and handed it to Lu Feng, saying, 6 cents, bring it. Lu Feng put the money in his pocket, did not pay it back, stared at her and asked, what did you scold just now? What? What did you scold at outside the door? Li Dafang hesitated for a moment. She felt that Lu Feng was afraid to do anything to her. So many people looked at her and said, it's a self-expression, what's the matter? Lu Feng's face sank, and when he raised his hand, he slapped him in the face. Snapped. This slapped Li Dafang staggered and almost fell to the ground. Everyone around was shocked, and he didn't expect Lu Feng to dare to do it. Do you dare to hit me? Li Dafang scolded angrily. What's wrong with hitting you? I'll tell you, 1 month later, I will definitely pay you back. This slap is to treat your mouth, if you don't agree with us, make a gesture. Lu Feng shouted sharply. Old stuff, someone hit me. Li Dafang cried, covering his face. Li Dafang's man emerged from the crowd. He was not tall. He only looked at Lu Feng. No one on this level knew that Li Dafang's house was in charge, and men wouldn't even dare to let go. Why? Want to do it with me? Lu Feng said with a sullen face, yes, I will call my group of brothers tomorrow, let's open up my arms and have fun. The man was startled when he heard this, and hurriedly pulled Li Dafang home. The people onlookers who saw this result, whispered away. Lu Feng turned around and turned back to the house, looking at Zhang Xiaoyan and said, it's okay, go to sleep. When the lights were turned off, the room fell into darkness. The moonlight outside the window passed through the thin curtains, giving the room a hazy feeling. Lu Feng lay on the bed with his arms pillowed. This was his first night in the 1990s. Zhang Xiaoyan patted Duo on the opposite bed, and she was already asleep. You can find a job in a few days, and life will get better. Zhang Xiaoyan said softly. Lu Feng doesn't want to go to work. This era is full of gold, and opportunities are everywhere. With his talents, it is not too simple to want to rise, but the problem is that there is no starting capital. You don't have to deal with your buddies, I beg you, okay? Lu Feng nodded and said, go to sleep. In the past few years of marriage, Zhang Xiaoyan slept very peacefully tonight. Lu Feng in her dream changed his mind and went to work every day. The days were very sweet, and the two had another baby. It was 3 days after Lu Feng woke up. Zhang Xiaoyan had already gone to work, and Duo also took away. Obviously, in Zhang Xiaoyan's heart, she still couldn't worry about leaving Duo to him. There was a bowl of porridge on the table. Lu Feng drank the porridge, feeling a little messed up. He didn't know where to start when there was a knock on the door. Who? Brother Feng, me, what's the matter with you these past few days? A loud stabbing sound came from outside the door. Opening the door, he saw a man in his early 20s, his clothes slicked. Lu Feng remembered him, his name was Zhou Jiangguo, and he had some money at home. Why don't you go out? I don't even look for a few brothers to play. Zhou Jiangguo walked in and asked. Something happened at home recently. Lu Feng looked at him, thinking silently in his mind that his group of Hupengagu friends is still a bit useful. There are 3 bungalows in the suburbs in Zhoujiangguo. Sometimes he goes there to drink. Sun Longbin's father is the head of a village, and there are 4 or 5 second hands. When these people go out to eat and drink, they are basically paid by Lu Feng, just playing him as a fool. You don't come to me, I'm still going to find you. Lu Feng patted Zhou Jiangguo on the shoulder very intimately and said, where are my brothers? Zhou Jiangguo always felt that something was wrong with Liu Feng, but he couldn't tell what was wrong, and said, "I'm waiting for you, walk around, have a good drink, and it's lively in the evening." Zhou Jiangguo sneered looking at Liu Feng's back and told him to come out, only to make him pay the bill. Such fools are rare. As for whether he has money or not, people don't care about it. After eating and drinking, just turn around and walk away. It's not the first time to do this. Inside the tavern, there was a loud voice. There were already 5 or 6 people sitting at a table. When everyone saw Liu Feng's arrival, everyone was happy and greeted, "Brother Feng is here." Liu Feng sat down and glanced at the crowd. He didn't say much. He started ordering. After drinking 3 rounds of food and 5 flavors, they were all a little overwhelming. Liu Feng lit a cigarette and said to Zhou Jiangguo, "Jiangguo, are you brothers? What you are saying is out of the ordinary, our 2 iron buddies, what's the matter? Brothers will settle it for you." Zhou Jiangguo waved his hand very boldly. "With your words, I didn't hand it to you brother in vain. Are those houses in your suburbs empty?" Zhou Jiangguo was taken aback for a moment, feeling something was wrong. Just as he was about to decline, Liu Feng shouted, "Is it a brother? Brother! It's a brother! You read www.yuyuganshu.com and lend me those houses for a few days." Liu Feng stretched out his hand and hugged Zhou Jiangguo in his arms, and said intimately, "We are brothers, what are brothers? Mine is yours, yours is mine." Everyone at the dinner table watched. Zhou Jiangguo was embarrassed to decline, nodded, and said, "No problem." He thought to himself that he was empty anyway, and he would take it back in a few days. He didn't know that Liu Feng didn't want to pay it back for a while. Looking at the mess on the table, Liu Feng frowned, and said, "I'm going to the toilet." After that, he ran out, squatted down to smoke a cigarette in the shade, and waited for them to come out after checking out. What Liu Feng needs to do is canned food. Canned food is now a scarce thing, especially in rural areas. Canned food is always given as gifts. As for the raw materials of canned food, Sun Longbin's father is the village head, and now is when the fruits are ripe in rural areas. In the restaurant, Zhou Jiangguo and Sun Longbin waited and waited for Liu Feng not to return. They realized something. Zhou Jiangguo stood up and settled the bill and left the restaurant. Seeing them come out, Liu Feng pretended to lift his pants and walked over. "Have you fallen into the toilet? 1 biller is gone? It cost a total of RMB and 2. Zhou Jiangguo began to repay the bill. "What is this? I have a stomachache, let's talk about it. Wasn't it the only thing I used to check out?" Liu Feng stared at him and shouted, "Is it a brother? If you say this kind of outrage, you still pay me 1 and 2. I can see this brother clearly." Zhou Jiangguo's suffocated face flushed, and he couldn't speak. Sun Longbin on the side hurriedly finished the game. "It's all brothers, it doesn't matter, let's go, the video room." Liu Feng looked at Sun Longbin and thought to himself, what did the brothers do? Brothers are used to pit. The first publication of this book is from 17K novels. The first time you see the genuine content. Zhou Jiangguo felt sullen along the way. He never thought that he would be slapped by Liu Feng. Because of face and not good at all, he could only sulp himself. At the entrance of the video room, Liu Feng put his arms around Sun Longbin's shoulders and was very affectionate. These people were not scheming, and they were very simple. Liu Feng's old fried dough sticks knew very well what they liked to listen to. In less than 20 minutes, the relationship with Sun Longbin rose rapidly. Sun Longbin took advantage of the alcohol and patted his chest and said, "Brother Feng, it's worth paying you to this brother. If you need a brother, just speak up." "Binzi, your father is the village chief, right?" "Yes." "Do you have fruit trees in your village?" Liu Feng asked, looking at him. "Yes, there are many fruit trees in our village, piece by piece on the top of the mountain." Sun Longbin stared at Lu Feng and said, "Brother Feng, what do you mean? I want to get some fruit recently." "What a big deal, what do you want to eat? Tell your brother, get you half a sack." Sun Longbin was extraordinarily bold. "I want a lot. I'll buy it. Go back and ask your dad to prepare something for me. Any kind of fruit will do." Lu Feng didn't say much, and stepped into the video room. Video halls and arcades are definitely the most fashionable things. It is also the first time that Hong Kong films hit the mainland market. Together with the ice rink, it is definitely a holy place for couples to date, and it is also a place for young people to gather. In a few years, DVDs, VCDs, and video halls will be replaced. Game halls and internet cafes will begin to gain the favor of young people. Then there will be the explosion of mobile phones and the internet. Lu Feng did a commercial deduction in the 1980s and 1990s. Every time a new technology appears, a lot of new billionaires will be launched. Behind all this is not only the iteration of technology, but also the iteration of talents. Lu Feng also wants to directly start the high-tech industry such as video disc players and Walkmans that will explode a few years later. It's a pity that he is like a ghost, and now he has only one goal, to get this small canning workshop first. Lu Feng's mind is not on the movie. Not to mention those seductive girls in the dark. There is not much money in the countryside now. People use grain for food, and then sell the grain to the local grain station. Even if it is a free venue, Lu Feng borrows the fruit on credit, makes it into cans, and exchanges it for grain from the countryside. If the grain station can't let him realization, the capital chain will be broken. Of course, Lu Feng, who has been in business for many years, knows how deadly it is to have too long a return cycle of funds. The head of the local grain station must be dealt with, and the grains can be realized the fastest. Lu Feng has no intention of watching a movie. He turned around and glanced at the big head next to him. He is the simplest of these people. "Brother Feng, what do you see me doing?" "Watching a movie." The big head was a little puzzled. "Big head, go out with me." Lu Feng patted the big head on the shoulder and stood up and walked out. As soon as I walked to the door, the girl who bought the ticket stopped the two of them and said, "You two will pay 5 cents each." Brothers who came with us to check out. Lu Feng pointed his finger at Zhou Jiangguo sitting in the front row. He was chatting with the two little girls in full swing. He checked out. Out of the video room, the big head asked, "Brother Feng, what's the matter? We have to spend money to go in again." "I know, you take me to the grain bureau." Lu Feng spoke and walked towards his 28th cart. "Why are you going to the food bureau?" The head was a little unhappy when he was interrupted to watch the movie, and muttered, "You ask Brother Joe or Brother Bin to send you there. They are motorcycles, and I have to pedal it." "Stop talking nonsense, hurry up." Lu Feng sat back and fell to the ground. The back seat also fell. "My back seat is broken, you sit on the crossbar." Lu Feng was sitting on the crossbeam, riding the bike with his big head, and the two people's postures were a bit ambiguous. Lu Feng could see his big head when he turned his head, and he hurriedly turned his head without looking. The reason why Lu Feng is called big head is because this person is simple and honest, and he doesn't think too much. If Zhou Jiangguo and Sun Longbin send them off, they are afraid that they will figure out something. Halfway through, Lu Feng suddenly said, "Go back to my house first." The head was very dissatisfied, but he still rode towards Lu Feng's house. When he got home, Lu Feng's first thing was to find out the suit he had used when he was married. Putting on his leather shoes, finding a bag in the creaky nest, twirling his hair, looking at himself in the mirror, Lu Feng took a deep breath and muttered to himself, "Those who have no money, go out to do things by cheating." As soon as he went out, he didn't take a few steps, and a pretty woman's voice sounded behind him. "Lu Feng? What are you doing?" Lu Feng turned his head and saw a woman in a fancy dress, about 1.65 meters tall, with an appearance of 26 and 27, but she had an unspeakable anger on her body. The woman's name is He Yanli, who also lives on this floor. She is a widow. Although the widow has a lot of right and wrong in front of her door, she has a lot of right and wrong. Do something, sister. He didn't go to the factory. Liu Feng said politely. What's your name, sister He? I'm seeing you outside. You were very handsome last night. You look like you are going to do a big business. He Yanli smiled like a nightmare. Liu Feng said a few words politely, not wanting to entangle her more. The man on this floor talked to her, and the couple designated to fight. Going downstairs, the big head was dumbfounded when he saw Liu Feng's style, and said, Brother Feng, what are you going to do? From now on, don't call me Brother Feng, call me Master, you know. Hey? Why? Why there are so many, call it. The big head was a little confused, but he still screamed, and Liu Feng sat on the beam and galloped towards the grain bureau. At the door of the grain bureau, Liu Feng sorted his clothes, and confirmed with the big head again, and walked in. As soon as he entered, he saw two people playing table tennis there. Who asked you to play table tennis during work hours? Liu Feng's face sank. You reading www.yuuganshu.com took the creaky bag in his hand, pointed at the two and shouted, Call your leader, what is it like? This yelling not only shocked everyone present, but the big head almost freaked out. He stared at Liu Feng with wide eyes. Is he crazy? Others saw that Liu Feng was full of style. They didn't dare to say anything. They hurriedly sat in a hurry. The two players bowed their heads and did not dare to speak. Liu Feng asked, Are you the station master? On the second floor. Liu Feng walked to the second floor with the bag in his hand, and took a cold look at the two players, and said, Be careful. On the second floor, standing in front of the office, Liu Feng glanced at the big head, and the big head hurriedly opened the door and said, Master, please. The station master Wang in the office looked up and saw Liu Feng stunned for a moment, then stood up and said, Are you too? Without saying anything, Liu Feng sat down on the sofa, tilted Erlang's legs, and looked at the station master Wang slowly. What is your last name? My name is Wang. What are you doing? It's okay, just come to talk to you about something. Don't be nervous, sit down. Liu Feng pointed to the sofa next to him, as if this office belonged to him. The big head stood aside, one big head and two big heads. Seeing that Liu Feng was anxious to death, he secretly cried out, What is he doing? Recently, I am planning to set up a factory. There may be a batch of grain that I want to sell to the grain station. If the head of the station can be more happy, it will be easy to do everything. Then I will tell you a few words with my father. Station Master Wang couldn't figure out the origin of the two people in front of him for a while, but looking at Liu Feng's aura, he was definitely not like ordinary people, and asked, What is your father? My old man has just been transferred, don't ask so carefully, it's not good for you. The first publication of this book is from 17K Novels. The first time you see the genuine content. Station Master Wang was shocked. He had already smelled something, and quickly put on a smiling face, looked at Liu Feng and said, Master Liu, right. Don't be so polite, just call me Xiao Liu. Liu Feng leaned on the sofa and said, This grain station, what kind of food is we collecting now? Corn, mung beans, wheat, etc., all. The station master Wang looked at Liu Feng and couldn't tell whether it was true or false for a while, and said, I don't know what price Liu Xiao wants to sell. According to the market conditions, I started the factory decently, understand? Who do you think of my old man? Liu Feng frowned, very displeased. Station master Wang let out a sigh of relief and nodded, yes, Liu Xiao is right. Liu Feng knew that regardless of the smiling face of the current station master Wang, he must be suspicious in his heart. Maybe he would send someone to check him after he left. He remembered that the Food Bureau reforms in this era were mainly for the abolition of food stamps. The staff of the Bureau had undergone a major transfer. Liu Feng cleared his throat and said, "Master Wang, when I saw you today, you are a good person. I will go back and talk to my old man. Recently, your position may have changed." "What?" Station Master Wang reacted. He was overjoyed, and he hurriedly bowed and said, "Thank you, Liu Xiao, for your help. If you have anything to do in the future, just give it to you." Liu Feng stood up and was about to leave. Station Master Wang said, "I will see you off." "No, I have a driver, so don't send me down. There are so many people, you understand." The station master Wang understood, and he said a few words to understand. He hurriedly took out a few tickets from his pocket, and slipped them into Liu Feng's hand quietly, slandering in his mouth again and again. After leaving the grain bureau, his big head was so scared that his back was soaked. He looked at Liu Feng and said, "Brother Feng, where did we get the car? Not to mention the driver. Aren't you the driver?" "Me?" Big Head said, "I'm just a broken 28th car. Isn't the 28th car a car?" Liu Feng turned around and glanced at the grain bureau, pulling the Big Head to the side, and whispered, "Leave here first and go to the suburban Zhou Jiangguo's house to take a look." The Big Head was riding a car and was puzzled along the way. The Liu Feng in the grain bureau was definitely not the brother Feng he knew. He carefully looked at the person in front of him and asked, "Brother Feng, why is Station Master Wang treat you so much? Are you polite? Do you have an identity that I don't know?" Seeing that he was still thinking about it, Liu Feng was a little speechless. With his IQ, he explained clearly that he estimated 2020, and said, "You have discovered this. Okay, I have a showdown. In fact, my family is very awesome. I wanted to get along with you in a low-key manner, but I didn't expect it to be alienated." Data was shocked when he heard this. It was originally just a joke by Liu Feng, but he was convinced that the momentum he showed in the Food Bureau was definitely not something an ordinary person could have. When we arrived in the suburbs, several bungalows were locked. Liu Feng found a brick and smashed the lock open. The inside was very spacious, with more than 200 square meters of space, enough space. Liu Feng looked around, made a simple plan in his heart, and took out the money stuffed by the station master Wang from his pocket. It was 10 yuan, which was really generous. "Big Head, find a small shop and buy some locks back." The Big Head really doesn't understand what Liu Feng is going to do. After doing so for a long time, he was confused and wondered, "Brother Feng, what are you going to do?" "I want to start from this small bungalow and build a huge business empire." Liu Feng's voice is extraordinarily bold. Now he is standing on the vent of history, and pigs can fly, not to mention him as an elite. The Big Head has a simple mind and well-developed limbs, so he can't understand so much. He just feels that Liu Feng seems to have changed, and he has an indescribable charm that makes him obey. When Zhou Jiangguo and his party came out of the video room, it was hard to see a few points. The money in the video room was from him. "I wanted to cheat on Liu Feng, but after a day's eating, drinking, and fun, I just treated myself. Brother Feng is not righteous." Biozi complained. "Leave as soon as you check out, this kind of brother, let's forget it. The most important thing is that I took the Big Head away, it." Zhou Jiangguo cursed. He was playing two fools, but today he was fooled by the two fools. "Where did you say the two went?" Sun Longbin muttered. He didn't know why. He always felt that Liu Feng had changed his person. When he saw him today, his eyes were cunning. "Fuck!" Zhou Jiangguo shouted, slapped his thigh, "Go to my suburban house and have a look, hurry up." Everyone rode on their motorcycles and galloped away. The setting sun, the evening breeze, and the blowing people were particularly comfortable. Liu Feng held the key in his hand to face the sunset and walked home. When passing by the supply and marketing agency, he stepped in and bought Duo toys and food by the way. When Zhou Jiangguo everyone arrived, Datu had just put on a new lock. Zhou Jiangguo shouted upon seeing this, "Big head, what the are you doing? Change the lock. This is my house, why would you change the lock?" Zhou Jiangguo cursed and got off the motorcycle. "Aren't you borrowing Feng Feng? He asked me to change the lock." Zhou Jiangguo stepped forward and took a look, and asked, "Where's the key? Open it for me." Brother Qi Feng took it, "So let me lock the door." The big head said straightforwardly, "What you said at the dinner table, lent it to Brother Feng. How do you say it doesn't count?" "I don't count, what's the matter?" Zhou Jiangguo sneered disdainfully, because he didn't say anything on the wine table, he was going to tear his face now. Brother Feng will be angry, and the consequences will be serious. The big head just finished saying this, you reading www.ukaenchu. Everyone on com laughed. To put it bluntly, it was just to spend his money on eating, drinking, and having fun to call him Brother Feng. In the eyes of these people, Liu Feng didn't even count his root hair. "Ouch, I'm scared to death, is your Brother Feng going to kill me? Open the lock for Lao Tzu." Looking at them, he said anxiously, "You don't know Brother Feng, I only found out today. People go sideways when they enter the food bureau." Data told them what happened today. Zhou Jiangguo and Sun Longbin looked stiff. If others told them these things, they would never believe them. But if they are big heads, they believe it, because they are big head, they won't lie. Zhou Jiangguo and Sun Longbin looked at each other, and the two were deeply shocked. Recall that from the first day they met Liu Feng, he hadn't been to work, and when he came out to spend, he basically settled the bill. And he is so generous and generous, both of them feel painful. Now everything is explained. People are not ordinary people. With such a character, how many people want to flatter themselves can't agree with them. The two almost offended them for $1 or $2. Zhou Jiangguo suddenly laughed and patted the shoulder of his big head and said, "I was joking with you. Brother Feng is my eldest brother in my heart. I want to use these rooms for as long as I want." I am afraid that Liu Feng himself would not have thought that the original Liu Feng's debauchery unexpectedly helped him so much. Liu Feng was carrying the things he bought, big bags and small bags, and just ran into He Yanli downstairs. She looked at the things in Liu Feng's hands. These things combined were not cheap, and most people wouldn't dare to buy them like this. "Oh, Liu Feng, have you made a fortune?" He Yanli joked, "Don't forget your sister when you get rich." The first publication of this book is from 17K Novels. The first time you see the genuine content. Liu Feng exchanged a few words with her and went upstairs. For people like He Yanli, Liu Feng didn't want to get in touch with them. Such women are greedy for petty and cheap goods. As long as they see who is advantageous, they will immediately post them. There are 5 floors in the unit building, and each floor has dozens of households. Everyone knows who's fart. The whole floor knows that Liu Feng's beating Li Dafang last night was still fermenting. Li Dafang is notorious for being domineering in the unit building, and he is not less annoying on weekdays, and many people secretly applaud. In the room, Li Dafang was sulking with a cold face. She didn't go out for a day. Has that kid Liu Feng made a fortune? He bought a lot of things and wore a suit, and he squeezed a bag in his pocket, he made it very stylish. Li Dafang muttered the man. He can't afford to eat any more, he's still pretending here? I'm not finished with him. Li Dafang's face turned blue and solemnly said, I'm going to find my cousin, so he can't eat. Liu Feng opened the door to the room and found that Zhang Xiaoyan had already returned. Sitting there was a little dazed. Duo was playing beside him. When he saw Liu Feng coming back carrying something, he rushed over, hugging Liu Feng's calf. "Guess what I bought for you?" Liu Feng knelt down and said. The little guy's big eyes were full of excitement. Looking in several bags, Liu Feng took out a little doll and handed it to her. Duo grabbed the doll, kissed Liu Feng's cheek fiercely, and said excitedly, "Thank you, Baba." Liu Feng stretched out his hand and touched the saliva on his face, with an indescribable feeling in his heart, stood up and looked at Zhang Xiaoyan, and found that she was looking sad again. "What's the matter?" Liu Feng put the things on the table and said, "I didn't hit you again, why did you look like this? Where did you get the money, buying so many things?" Zhang Xiaoyan raised her head and asked. I. Liu Feng didn't know how to tell her. "You are mixing with your gang of buddies again, right?" Zhang Xiaoyan's eyes instantly turned bleak, as if losing all the colors, full of disappointment. "No. Then what did you do today? I asked you to find a job. Did you find it? I told the director of the factory today that I found you an unloading job. When I came back, I found that you were all gone." Zhang Xiaoyan was talking, tears streaming down her face. In order to find a job for Liu Feng, she was stubborn. If it weren't for the director is a woman, the rumors in the factory would have been overwhelming. After finally agreeing, she ran back to find Liu Feng, but she was gone. Looking at her, Liu Feng was really speechless, saying that women are made of water. He believed it now. He stepped forward and wiped his tears. He said, "I was wrong." "Hey!" Zhang Xiaoyan had never thought about it. Liu Shengeng coaxed herself and asked subconsciously, "Where is wrong?" After she said that, she felt that she had been spoiled by him for the past 2 days and had a temper. She chuckled and sniffed and asked, "You are not with your brothers, why are you doing it?" "I went to look for a job, I picked up $10 on the way, and I got a job." "Really? What kind of job?" It's a small processing factory, doing everything, it costs tens of dollars a month." Liu Feng fooled. He knew that if Zhang Xiaoyan knew that she was mixed with Zhou Jiangguo, she would definitely think she had become the way she used to be. Cheat first. Zhang Xiaoyan was happy, looking at a large amount of vegetables and meat, stood up and tidied it up, stretched out her hand towards Liu Feng, and hooked her finger. "What are you doing?" Liu Feng puzzled. "Money, all $10 have been spent." Liu Feng laughed dumbly and had to put the remaining 7 yuan in her pocket in her hand. It took so much. Zhang Xiaoyan was very distressed, and counted the money and said, "I will pay Li Dafeng's money first. You were also impulsive last night. Why did you beat others? Don't you know who is Li Dafeng's cousin? Come and apologize with me." "No, she won't pay her money first, let's cook," Liu Feng said solemnly. Zhang Xiaoyan felt that he was a big man's self-esteem at work, and he didn't break it, so he went to cook first. There was a burst of scent of food in the kitchen, playing with dolls a lot, the home was full of indescribable warmth, but Liu Feng was thinking about the canning workshop. The food station is done, and the fruit is no problem. Next, a semi-automatic packaging machine is needed, and the canning bottle is also the cost. The most important thing is the fruit season. As long as the fruit passes the ripening season, then Liu Feng will have no supply, and this workshop will have to be suspended. He only has a few months to get these. Empty glove White Wolf, it's difficult. Where can I swindle a semi-automatic packaging machine? The glass factory is not easy to swindle, but the workers can say that the salary is higher, and the salary will be settled next month, which can swindle 1 month. Liu Feng patted his head with his hand, feeling that his head is bigger than the big one. In this situation, he is definitely starting from scratch, not only is his hands white, he is also thick-skinned. The food was brought up, Zhang Xiaoyan took off her apron and said to Duo, eat, and play with the doll in a while. A family of 3 was eating, and Duo suddenly raised his head and asked, "Mom, why don't you sleep with Dad?" "Hey!" Zhang Xiaoyan couldn't respond a little. You reading www.yuyuganshu.com. You child, where did you hear these things? Zhang Xiaoyan's face was a little red. Han Xiaoqiang told me that his mother and father are sleeping together, and they are still under the covers. Zhang Xiaoyan blushed like a monkey's ass, slapped her hands a lot, and said shyly, "What is the kid talking nonsense? Don't talk nonsense to that Han Xiaoqiang, he is a boy, you are a girl, you know." But he said, "Many parents don't sleep together, and they all get divorced in the end, and I want them to sleep together." Duo's big eyes were full of longing. It can be seen how much she cherishes the family of these 2 days. What does the kid know? Eat. Zhang Xiaoyan covered the topic. Liu Feng smiled and said, "Then you go to bed early tonight, maybe it will happen." "Her child, you follow nonsense too." Zhang Xiaoyan glared at Liu Feng, her face was indescribably shy, and the little woman showed her attitude, especially coquettish. Liu Feng has seen many beautiful women, all kinds of amazing eyeballs, but there is a special charming woman like Zhang Xiaoyan who doesn't play a fan, but he hasn't seen it before, and he was a little dazed for a while. "Why are you staring at me straightforwardly?" Zhang Xiaoyan gave him a white look, not daring to look again, bowing her head to eat. It was already late at night, and Duo fell asleep holding her doll. Liu Feng was a little confused while lying on her single bed. Zhang Xiaoyan looked at the man on the opposite bed with the moonlight outside the window, and her heart was even more disturbed. The two have been married for 4 years, but they haven't had with each other. "I'm afraid no one will believe it." Liu Feng turned sideways and whispered towards Zhang Xiaoyan, "Did you fall asleep?" Zhang Xiaoyan looked at the sleeping a lot in her arms, her heartbeat speeded up suddenly, and a blush appeared on her pretty face in the dimness. The first publication of this book is from 17K novels. The first time you see the genuine content. Zhang Xiaoyan's heart is very disturbed. Looking at the opposite Liu Feng, these 2 days are really dreamlike. She has smiled the most in the 2 days since her marriage. Or, give it to him? Both husband and wife have been married for 4 years. Well, I fell asleep. Zhang Xiaoyan slowly opened the quilt, preparing to climb onto Liu Feng's bed. "You also have to go to bed early, and you have to get up early to go to work tomorrow," Liu Feng said, turning over to sleep. Zhang Xiaoyan's movements froze in midair, and she lay down again, feeling aggrieved in her heart, secretly thinking, is she not as pretty as she was before? Or did he have seen Hua world outside in the past 2 years, and looked down on himself? Early the next morning, Station Master Wang was notified of a meeting. The Grain Bureau was reformed. Station Master Wang still managed the food station, but it was raised a bit. This made him extremely happy and attributed everything to Liu Feng. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when Liu Feng woke up. There was a bowl of porridge and a steamed bun on the table. He sighed and muttered, "Semi-automatic packaging line, glass bottle manufacturer, where can I cheat?" With the dilemma in front of him, no matter how clever a liar is, he can only do nothing. Liu Feng doesn't even have the capital to pack himself. He only has a suit and a broken bag to get married, and the rest depends on his acting skills. There was a knock on the door, and Liu Feng said weakly, "Who?" "Brother Feng, are you awake?" "It's me, Jiangguo, you open the door." Outside the door, there was not only Zhou Jiangguo, but also Sun Longbin, Biozi, and Big Tou. They squatted at the door at 7 o'clock in the morning, bumped into Zhang Xiaoyan, and had a fight. Liu Feng opened it, and Zhou Jiangguo's face was full of smiles, all flattering smiles, bowed, like an eunuch, and said, "Morning, Brother Feng, I'm here to apologize to you. Brother drink too much, don't be surprised." "Yes, Brother Feng, don't take it to your heart, you will always be my best brother," just like a real brother. Sun Longbin also hurriedly said. Everyone talked and talked, as if they had changed themselves. You who opened your mouth and closed your mouth are very respectful. Liu Feng, who has gotten a little confused about the situation, wondered, what's the matter with you? The big head said straightforwardly, Brother Feng, I told them about the two of us going to the food bureau yesterday, and they brought me here this morning. Liu Feng was stunned for a moment, thinking frantically about the relationship. After 7 or 8 seconds, he figured it out, laughed, and said, Brother Zhou, if you are a big head, do you believe it? Nothing, you don't listen to him nonsense. If Liu Feng admitted generously, Zhou Jiangguo would really have to think about the truth and falsehood of it. Now he is denying it all the time, just because he is afraid of taking advantage of it. Regardless of whether it is true or not, you are my brother. If your brother did something wrong yesterday, I will pay you for it. The big head said from the side, Brother Feng, your wife had a fight with us this morning, let us stay away from you. Liu Feng sighed, sat on the stool, and said, Brothers, my wife does have opinions on you, and the opinions have been quarreled several times. You still don't come to see me at home. It's better to contact me less. It's a brother, I don't know about Mount Tai, Zhou Jiangguo, I just got scolded quietly in the morning, I didn't make any noise, Brother Feng, you brother, I have settled, if there is any problem, I will settle it all for you. Zhou Jiangguo, the pat on the chest crackled. Liu Feng knew that Zhou Jiangguo was a 10,000 yuan household, and he was already considered a rich person. He must have a lot of relationships. He pondered for a while and said, Recently, there is indeed something that I eat, drink and play every day, which makes my father unhappy. I have to make a few moves and let him take a look. I'm going to set up a cannery, but now there is a lack of a semi-automatic packaging machine. Zhou Jiangguo and Sun Longbin looked at each other. The two of them were thinking about this kind of machine crazily. Zhou Jiangguo suddenly slapped his thigh and said, I know there is an old one. Liu Feng got excited, and hurriedly told himself to calm down. He is now the son of a big man, nodded and said, I change my clothes and go take a look. Liu Feng changed his clothes and went out. When he first went out, he met Li Dafeng. He glanced at each other. No one said that. Li Dafeng looked at Liu Feng's back and snorted coldly, as a whole, mix with these idle ruffians. Wait. You feel better. Today, there was no big-head car. Everyone was on motorcycles. When they arrived in a large courtyard in the suburbs, Zhou Jiangguo went into the courtyard and shouted, Is Uncle Lu? A man in his 40s walked out of the house, took a look at the group of people, and walked forward to greet Zhou Jiangguo. Sun Longbin glanced at Liu Feng quietly. Zhou Jiangguo had been shown this morning. Without even inserting a word, he leaned forward quietly and said, Brother Feng, do you get fruit if you open a cannery? Yeah, didn't I tell you that day? Don't worry, I will tell my dad when I go back, let him keep the fruits in the village for you. As long as you need them, the fruits in the whole village are all yours. Sun Longbin pleased. Liu Feng nodded and said nothing. Zhou Jiangguo came over and introduced, This is my brother. He is interested in your semi-automatic packaging machine. Uncle Lu said politely, Let's go, look at the machine, it's been a few years. Everyone came to a large utility room, and a semi-automatic packaging machine more than 4 meters long was covered with dust, but it was still visible, which was very good. This packaging machine automatically fills and seals. It can fill more than 200 bottles of cans per hour, and the speed is no problem. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Everyone cleaned the machine out and tried it. There was no problem at all. Uncle Lu clapped his hands and said, Brother, how about it? If you really want it, 5,000 yuan, it's useless to leave me here. 5,000? 500,000 yuan household. Liu Feng nodded calmly, took out a pack of Beetling cigarettes from his pocket, scattered them to the crowd, lit one of them, and said, "Well, let me pull the machine over. I will use it first and wait for me. I have a lot of money, and I'll give you 6,000 yuan. To me, more than 1,000 and 2,000 are okay, it's all small money." 1,000 and 2,000 is a small amount of money? Uncle Lu was amused by these words. 10,000 households did not dare to say so. He came to play the empty glove white wolf game. It was so funny, he said, "Impossible. This is an imported machine. I want to buy a new one." "You can't buy anything, you have to use foreign exchange, understand?" Seeing Liu Feng frowned, Zhou Jiangguo hurriedly pulled Uncle Lu aside and whispered, "Uncle Lu, according to what I said, just lend it to him. 1 or 2,000 is really nothing to others. Are you teasing me? You are so rich, have you come here to fight for nothing? He is in trouble now. I told you this. The machine is in my suburban house. You can go and watch it. The most important thing is that you don't notice this person's temperament is very different." Uncle Lu turned his head and took a close look at Liu Feng. He was in a straight suit and a handsome figure. The temperament revealed on his body was no ordinary person at first glance. "What do you mean? Someone up there?" "It's not that there's someone up there, it's that the person up there is his father, and the grain bureau has to give face, okay?" Zhou Jiangguo winked. Uncle Lu immediately understood, and patted Zhou Jiangguo on the shoulder and whispered, "Yes, this kind of people have climbed up, your kid has a bright future?" The first publication of this book is from 17K Novels. The first time you see the genuine content. The house belonged to Zhou Jiangguo. With the machine there, Uncle Lu was relieved, just using it for Liu Feng, he would exchange a favor, a very cost-effective business. Uncle Lu turned his head to Liu Feng and politely said, "Since I am a good friend of Jiangguo, I will give this face to my friends." Liu Feng was very excited. The machine's things were settled in this way, but his face remained motionless, and he nodded and said, "Thank you, Uncle Lu. If there is any use in the future, remember to talk. Today, this machine can pull it over." Zhou Jiangguo helped so much and remembered so much personal feelings. Sun Longbin didn't get anything. For fear of being marginalized, he hurriedly said, "Brother Feng, I'll find a car and hire a few people to bring it to you." Liu Feng patted Sun Longbin on the shoulder and praised his good brother, making Sun Longbin's smile bloom. "Everyone don't stand in the yard, come in to drink, walk around," Uncle Lu said politely. Everyone entered the house. Uncle Lu was very old and had experienced many things. Although he was chatting, he was inquiring about the details of Lu Feng. If it were an ordinary person, he would definitely be circumvented by what he said. Liu Feng cleverly avoided it. If the other person forced him to ask, he would pretend to be mysterious and tell him coldly that he shouldn't ask more, just for his benefit. Having had a meal at Lu Shu's house at noon, and drinking some wine at the dinner table, Lu Shu thought that he, the old river and lake, faced a shaggy boy like Liu Feng, and he was almost caught. Unexpectedly, he still didn't know anything, and only occasionally revealed a little wind, leaving him nothing. That's why he felt that Liu Feng was not an ordinary person, but a figure who had seen the world. Whether it is facing verbal rhetoric or cleverly coerced questions, he can cope very well, especially after drinking alcohol, he can still think carefully. It is definitely not a child of ordinary people. Sending Liu Feng and the others out of the house, Uncle Lu watched them leave, muttering to himself, "Actually speaking, it shouldn't be a liar, right?" The machine problem was solved perfectly. Liu Feng stood in the rental house in the suburbs, looking at the big guy in front of the row, feeling excited, and thinking to himself, set a small goal for himself, first become a tent house and yuan household. Liu Feng turned his head and looked at Sun Longbin, and said, "Brother Bin, when you go back tonight, just tell your dad. Please prepare a few carts for fruits like pears, apricots, and peaches. The price is higher than the market price. A few li, I'll turn around this week and check out immediately. Brother, I don't have money, but I really want to do something to show my father. When the time comes, I will invite my brothers to eat, drink and have fun every day. Brother Feng, you can call me Binzi. It's too strange. You are all brothers. If you say these things, it's okay. They will be charged according to the market price. When you want it, I will let my dad deliver it in person. Sun Longbin, his words are full of sincerity. Brother Feng, don't see you outside. Yes, all brothers, my own family. Looking at everyone with gratitude, Liu Feng clasped his fists in his hands, and said in a deep voice, knowing your brothers is really the biggest gain in my life. Brother, I promise you that my father will take root here and definitely let you guys. Fi Wang Tengda. This is what everyone is waiting for, and they are all excited. In the evening, Liu Feng planned the rental house almost the same. If he builds a few stoves, he can cook canned food. Now only the canned bottle is left. Is Xiao Liu here? A voice came from the door. Everyone turned around and saw Station Master Wang standing at the door. Liu Feng wondered, Station Master Wang? Why are you here? I'm here to thank you specially. Yesterday you said that the factory was located in the suburbs, and I found it all the way. The Station Master Wang held a briefcase and whispered, Xiao Liu, come here. Liu Feng stepped forward and asked, what's the matter? You accept this little meaning. If you need anything in the future, just give it to you. The Station Master Wang said, stuffing a few tickets into Liu Feng's pocket. Not far away, Zhou Jiangguo and Sun Longbin stared at them with wide-eyed eyes. Although they heard what the big head said, seeing is believing, even if it is a character like Station Master Wang, they have to flatter others. What kind of money are you? Liu Feng was puzzled and frowned. Buy some nutritional supplements for your old man. At today's meeting, I got up a little bit and I'm still in charge of the grain station. I'll wait outside the door and don't disturb you. The Station Master Wang went out very wisely. Liu Feng didn't look at how much money, he coughed, and everyone hurriedly pretended that nothing happened. Let's do this for today, everyone, go back first. Thank you brothers, big head, you lock the door. Brother Feng, I'll take you back. Zhou Jiangguo said. No need, let me give it. The Station Master Wang, who was waiting outside, pointed to Santana not far away. He came to flatter Liu Feng today. How could he give such an opportunity to Zhou Jiangguo? It was exceptionally hot today, even if the sun had set, the air was still full of scorching heat. A group of people downstairs took the cold, and muttered about things in the nearest building. A Beverly car stopped downstairs, and a man in his 30s walked down, wearing sunglasses and a cigarette in his mouth, giving a sense of fashion. Can afford to drive now. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com is definitely a rich person, or it is a car equipped by the unit. Everyone is looking at the car and chatting. Whose family is this? Drive a car? I don't know, I haven't seen it. On the 4th floor, Li Dafang's house, don't you know? Li Dafang still has this relative. Li Dafang's own cousin is very relevant, otherwise you think you can be so prosperous? He is prosperous, he has the capital. A few years ago, he fought with Li San, and Li San was arrested the same day. Liu Feng is finished this time. I really thought I knew a few bastards, so I just walked sideways. Nowadays, not everyone can afford TV sets. There is a shortage of entertainment items. Watching the lively is the most important entertainment activity. In a short while, more than 20 people gathered, chattering non-stop. He Yanli stood in the crowd. Here, looking at the car, I was full of envy. Li Dafang walked down with an arrogant face, leaning on the car, and shouted, just wait here, I told him to walk around today, and dare to slap me. I really think there is no one in Li's family. He Yanli took a step forward, looked at the car, then looked at Li Dafang's cousin, and said, "How much is this car?" Li Dafang glanced at her harshly, and said bitterly, "Go on the side of death, not talking to the widow, bad luck." He Yanli's face turned purple. After humming for a long time, she returned to the crowd. Now everyone is waiting for Liu Feng to come back. Watching the show, Li Dafang let out a word, and she would pay back 10 times that Liu Feng's slap. Liu Feng sat in the car, pointed his finger at the road ahead, and said, "Just turn in, Master Wang, you can stop here, there is no need to send it downstairs." "How can it work? If Liu Xiao is willing, I will be your full-time driver in the future." The first publication of this book is from 17K Novels. The first time you see the genuine content. As the car drove downstairs, Liu Feng looked at a lot of people and there was a car parked there, wondering in his heart, why is it so lively today? It is a rare thing to get a car downstairs on weekdays. There are 2 cars today, and the co-pilot is still sitting on the landing peak. For a while, everyone can't figure out what's going on. Li Dafang saw that Liu Feng had come back in a car. He was taken aback, and said, "Where did you run a car?" "Sister, don't worry, it's okay." Li Yi is confident, and it is still a piece of cake to settle a second bastard. His network is very strong. He mainly acts as a broker for some businessmen. Everyone has to do both. Give him face. Liu Feng got out of the car, looked at so many people, and asked, "What's the matter?" "Liu Feng, hurry up, don't come back recently." "That's right, let's go." "You got into trouble." A few aunts who had a good relationship with Zhang Xiaoyan on weekdays reminded them in a low voice, but more people watched the fun. Li Yi stepped forward, looked at Liu Feng and asked, "Your name is Liu Feng, right?" Liu Feng looked at him, nodded and said, "Yes, what's the matter?" "What's the matter? You thought you would be done with a slap in the face." Li Dafang rushed over, his whole body was fierce, and he rushed directly to Liu Feng and shouted, "I'm telling you, you're having trouble." Li Yi lit a cigarette and said, "Brother, what do you think about this? I will give you a few options. First, let my sister slap you 10 times. Second, you go in and squat. I have this ability, and thirdly, do as per the way, and I will abolish you." Li Yi's voice was not loud, even a little low, but the words were extraordinarily arrogant, making people around him feel a little scared. This time Liu Feng was really over. "Liu Feng, aren't you pretty good in weekdays? Didn't you mean you are a bastard?" "That's right, why don't you even dare to fart now, call your brothers." "I'm afraid he is some brothers of wine and meat, and can't be called." Ha 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 ha. The ridicule is endless, as if the dissatisfaction with Liu Feng in the usual days is all revealed under Li Yi's power at this moment. "And her cousin wife?" Li Dafang shouted arrogantly. Liu Feng's expression became gloomy, and he looked at Li Yi and said, "Is it so amazing?" "Li Dafang, what did you just say?" "What? Talking about your cousin wife, what's the matter?" Li Dafang held his head high, very arrogant. "Now Liu Feng dare to move her, there is Li Yi here, and I dare not even dare to borrow him." Li Dafang's his face was full of contempt. Looking at her like this, Liu Feng frowned, raised his hand abruptly, just slapped it in the face, and cursed. Snapped. This slap shocked everyone, including Li Yi. Li Dafang only felt a burning pain on his face, and his head was buzzing. Li Yi reacted with a grim face, dare to hit his sister in front of him? Does the other party want to live? Fuck. Li Yi drank and started to call, "I abolished you today, telling you that if you abolish you, you will also be in vain." The people around him hurriedly backed away, for fear of getting into trouble. Many people cried out in their hearts, "It's over, Liu Feng is completely over today, dare to provoke Li Yi, but he has no good end. Kill him to me! Li Dafang cried, covering his face with his hands. Station Master Wang has been sitting in the car. He thought it was a neighborhood business, but now he wants to do it. He didn't dare to hurt Liu Xiao. He hurriedly got out of the car and shouted, "Stop it!" Li Yi stopped, not because Master Wang's voice was loud, but because he was able to drive Santana. He might not be able to provoke him. If it was his own car, he would definitely be the number one in the business world. If it was a driver, it would be even worse. Get up! You try to move him. Station Master Wang walked forward. He was dressed in suit pants, white shirt, with a bag tucked under his arms, and a big back. He stared at Li Yi and said, "You move him today. I'm sure, you can't eat and walk around." Facing Station Master Wang, Li Yi's momentum was not so full, and he asked, "Who are you? Nosy here, and don't go out to inquire about Li Yi's name." Li Yi? Station Master Wang thought about it slightly and laughed. This person does have a reputation. He has been around various dining tables all the year round. To put it bluntly, he is a matchmaker, and he is not a high-end meal broker. It's for people, right? Station Master Wang sneered, "You stare at your dog to see who I am." Li Yi took a closer look, he felt a little bit in his heart, and asked carefully, "From the Grain Bureau?" Webmaster Wang nodded. Li Yi panicked, put on a smiling face, and walked forward and whispered, "Master Wang, right? You see this is done." The flood rushed to the Dragon King Temple. The family does not know the family. What is Liu Feng doing in a mix of things like this? Master Liu is what you can say. Station Master Wang frowned. Liu. Master Liu. Li Yi was dumbfounded. How high is Liu Feng's status if he can be called that by the Station Master Wang? He can't imagine. Don't ask too much, knowing too much is not good for you. It's not something you can snoop, understand? Station Master Wang said solemnly, "Go and apologize to Xiao Liu." Li Yi was so frightened, his heart beat faster, his throat was a little dry, he took a few deep breaths, and walked towards Lu Feng. Seeing this, Li Dafang thought that his younger brother would avenge himself, and shouted, "Give me a vengeance." "Shut up!" Li Yi suddenly turned his head and yelled, not to mention Li Dafang, even the people around him couldn't react to it. Why did he suddenly lose his temper at his sister? Next, a scene that challenged everyone's nerves happened. Li Yi walked up to Liu Feng and showed a humble smile. He arched slightly and said, "Sorry, my sister has never gone to school and is not sensible. You can bear it, don't take it to your heart." Everyone was shocked watching Li Yi's transformation. The expression on his face was a bit sluggish. They didn't know what happened. However, judging from the way Li Yi faced the Station Master Wang just now, it must have been kicked. Bored up. He Yanli witnessed everything in front of her, with only one thought left in her mind, and Liu Feng was really developed. "Okay, don't care about you. How about I invite you to dinner when I have time?" Li Yi said in an inch. Liu Feng glanced at him coldly, turned around and ordered Station Master Wang to let him go back and go upstairs by himself. Li Dafang stepped forward and blamed his younger brother, "What are you doing? I asked you to help me smoke him, and I got another slap in the face. Sister, stay away from him in the future, this is not someone we can afford, understand?" Li Dafang's brain buzzed, really can't understand, a second bastard, why even his brother dare not move. He Yanli hurriedly passed through the crowd and went upstairs with Liu Feng. She just walked up the stairs, stretched her hand to pull the clothes on her chest, tidied her hair, walked a few steps quickly, and overtook her. "Liu Feng, sister will talk to you." Thing? The first publication of this book is from 17K Novels. The first time you see the genuine content.